right here in South Carolina. My first job was working in my dad's warehouse. I learned the value of working hard and the value of a dollar, the old-fashioned way. After graduating with a degree in engineering, I attended MUSC and married Heather, my medical school sweetheart. I proposed right here at the Sullivan's Island Lighthouse and was married in Somerville. I've spent my entire life serving people and solving problems. As a soccer coach, I taught the importance of teamwork. It never occurred to me I would need to tell anyone that boys could not play on the girls' team. As an engineer, I learned how to break down complex problems and find solutions that worked. As a doctor, my job was to diagnose the root cause of an illness, not just treat the symptoms. When I was 10 years old, I lost my own sister because a bureaucrat's signature stood between her and a new life-saving ICU. Government regulations should not make quality worse and healthcare more expensive. Like President Trump, I'm an entrepreneur who has solved problems in construction, real estate, and finance. My most important job is being a Christian husband and father. Like you, I'm worried about the country we're leaving our children. At home and in all of my professions, I've had to balance budgets and solve financial problems. My parents taught me to leave things better than I found them. Can we say we're doing that in our country right now? When I look at America today, I see a country with deep underlying problems that career politicians either can't see or won't fix. We have an out-of-control national debt, which will cause hyperinflation when we have to print money to pay it off. It's not the politicians and bureaucrats in Washington who will suffer the most from those skyrocketing prices. It's working families like us. We must stop our country from eroding from within by supporting law enforcement and protecting our children from woke DEI policies. But this is our century to lead. We need to balance our budget, support President Trump's plan to take on China, and unleash American innovation. We need to win in artificial intelligence and win in energy to secure our future. I'm Dr. Sam McCown. I'm not running to be another voice in the choir. I'm running to get results. I'm an engineer, a doctor, an entrepreneur that has spent my life solving tough problems in the real world. And I'm running for Congress to help America solve the biggest ones yet.
Wow. I hope you guys felt very inspired listening to that today because I do have a special guest with me. But before we begin today's episode, what I want to do is begin with prayer. So I'm just going to take a moment before we start to just start that way. So, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity that we have, Lord, in this great nation to elect leaders, to set forward in motion the future of South Carolina. And Lord, I thank you for the guests that we have on our podcast episode today. I pray that you would fill him with strength and you would give him, God, wisdom and strategy, Lord. I also thank you, God, for this great nation, what you're doing, God, the many people that have turned to you, the many Bibles that have been sold, Lord, increase that we've seen, Lord, and revival taking place throughout our nation and just a returning of this nation to its foundation. I thank you so much, Father, that faith is being married to our love for our country. And Lord, we just pray that this continues. We pray for a great transformation that propels the kingdom of God in South Carolina, and that we would see that in our economics and our education and every system that we have in our great state and in our nation. In Jesus' name, amen. Right now, South Carolina is in a critical leadership season. And who we elect right now in terms of our congressman, our governor in different offices is very critical. And so what I want to do with some of these episodes that we have, especially as we have our elections coming up, is put in front of you people that'll be running for different candidates, or candidates that'll be running for different offices, excuse me. So today I do have a special guest, guys, with me. I'm super excited to have him on. His name is Dr. Sam McCown. And he is, as you can hear from the name, a doctor. He has such a repertoire in history. And I want to bring that to you as the voter, so you are informed about the different people that are running for different offices within the state. And as you, the voter, can make an informed decision about these candidates. As you know, I allow you guys to hop in the comment section, so feel free to do that. And I may just bring your question up during this live episode. And I do want to thank you all for being with me today. So Dr. Sam McCown, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Now, before hopping into this episode with me, you were at a barbecue. Is that correct?
That's right.
How was that?
It was good. Ace Hardware in James Island. It does it a few times a year just to pay Customer Appreciation Day, and they do one every Memorial Day weekend. I think they do it 4th of July as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, that's great. You're making so many moves in our community. And I'm grateful to have you on, and I'm also grateful for the times that we have met, like in different events that we've been in. But as I took some time to prepare for this episode, I started to research a little bit about our history when it comes to how many. I just had a question in my mind. I wanted to know how many doctors have actually ran for higher office. And as I was searching and digging for this, just curious, what I found is very shocking. And I think will give us clear perspective, strong perspective as we get into this episode today. So, over the entire life of the Continental Congress, the growing body that commissioned George Washington, declared the independence from Great Britain, there were 343 delegates there, men that served as delegates. 31 of them were doctors. So nearly one, basically one in 10 of them were doctors. And these are physicians that weren't just sitting idly by, or they were actually helping build this nation from scratch. And so I thought this was very profound, considering that we have a doctor on today. And I wanted to ask you, knowing that history, knowing that fact, how does it feel knowing that if elected, you could be a part of that legacy as well?
Well, that's a very interesting fact. I had not heard those numbers. There's certainly a lot fewer in Congress today, but I'd be
Yes.
honored to serve either way, but certainly honored to serve as a physician for South Carolina. I did a little research a few months ago and learned that the last time South Carolina had a physician in the House of Representatives represented was a little over 200 years ago. So
Wow.
I'll be the first doctor in the House for South Carolina for over 200 years. I would be honored to serve.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how does politics play into that?
Sure, sure. I'm going to give you a little extended version. So, first of all, my faith is important to me. I accepted Christ as an early age. I was blessed to have both my parents were Sunday school teachers. My mom was a school teacher from a big family of school teachers. And I accepted Christ personally as my Lord and Savior at a young age. When I was 10, I had a 14-year-old sister named Fran, and she was a healthy, active, loving older sister, very sweet. And she unexpectedly got sick one day and ended up in the hospital. There was a Her doctor wanted to put her in the ICU, but couldn't because it was full, and there had been a brand new ICU that had been waiting and waiting to be open. The only thing it was waiting on was approval from a government regulator. So he put Fran in a regular hospital bed, and she passed away. And we were told different things at the time, but years later, my dad told me that he felt like she died from allergic reaction to penicillin, that she would have survived if she had been in the ICU. Um, and later in life, I found the letter that my father wrote to his state representative, kind of telling him what happened and asking him to do anything he could to prevent something like that from happening again. So, for anyone that's listening and had a tragic loss like that, she was 14 years old, and it was just all of a sudden, it really, really does change your life. It produces a lot of stress on the family. It challenges your faith. My father's hair turned gray in a month, and
Mm.
and he really had very little interest in running his business anymore after that. But we stayed together as a family and all dealt with it in different ways. And Christ and our church was very supportive and a big part of recovering from that. But anyway, so later in life, that was one of the things at an early age helped me realize that government regulations, even with the very best intentions, can have catastrophic consequences.
Mm.
Later in life, I decided I wanted to go to med school. Um, but I wasn't great in biology and chemistry. I was always good with numbers, and I was scared that I couldn't get in med school. So I did mechanical engineering undergraduate, kind of as a backup. But fortunately, I was able to get into med school. And my friends say I still think and I analyze things like an engineer a lot of the times, and I think it helped me in medicine as well. Um, and so I started in investing in various things at a very young age, and set savings goals long term. And anyway, I did medicine for a long time, but I also was an entrepreneur on the side, working in construction, real estate, and investing and doing various things. And some doctors can get home at night at 4 a.m. and wake up I'm sorry, and go to sleep at 5 a.m. and then sleep for 5 hours and recover. And I did. I would go home if I got home at 4 a.m., get to sleep at 5, my brain would wake me up at 6, and I'd be exhausted with my family the whole day. So after praying about it for several years and talking to my wife, and since my side gigs, so to speak, were going well, we decided I should retire from medicine. I miss it. I love radiology. I love the patients. So I've been able to work in a lot of different industries and have had success in other industries. And every step of the way, I've been able to see how government regulation really, really slows the economy. It's a drag on families. It's a drag on employment. It's a drag on businesses. So having experienced all that, My parents were always trying to give back to the community. They taught me that we're blessed to be in this country. We're born in the greatest country on earth, and we have to work to keep it that way. So
Mm.
they always volunteered for things and set a great example for me. And I've tried to do that. I've worked on. I was chairman of the board of a homeless foundation. I've been on the scouting, my local scouting board at the time, and various things like that. I've been on a hospital board as well, but I've always been concerned about our country and particularly the debt that it's been piling on. And we can talk about that more later. But I've tried to support candidates quietly in the background when I think there's good candidates out there. And I'm the kind of person I'm happy to be behind the scenes. I don't have to be in front of the camera, and I wouldn't be running for office today if I thought the mostly career politicians that were in Congress were addressing this.
Mm.
But that's what's driven me to run. Is I've kind of always been a good financial problem solver. I think that those are some of the biggest long term issues that our country faces, and I feel like all too often politicians are trying to get the short, quick fix when we really need long term solutions.
Hmm. Now, one of the things that surprised me when I met you was that knowing your background, how much success that you've had. I think you're actually funding your own campaign. Is that correct?
That's correct. I've fund the vast majority of my campaign. I think for a lot of people running for office, when they get in the congressional salary and things like that, it's a financial win for them. Certainly, I learned in the process that attorneys a lot of times it's a benefit to their business. For me, I've put all my career stuff and investing I've done to the side. I've always been a stock investor, for example, and I've stopped doing that during the campaign, and I'm not going to do that in Congress because we have so many ethics problems in
Yeah.
Congress where people are trading on inside information, basically, which should be illegal. I think they should just be arrested for it. But we
Yeah.
need we need ethics reform in Congress. So yeah, to me this is giving back to the country. I'm investing in it. I'm gonna run one time, make this investment in myself. If people choose me, I'm gonna work as hard as I can to serve our country and bring it to a better place. To me, it's giving back.
I think the key thing that keeps surprising me about you is that you're like, even with all this success and what you could bring to the table, you are very humble. And even people I talk to that know you say that same thing about you, that for the success you have, the man of God you are, you're extremely humble. And I can definitely say that, having met you a few times and being in spaces with you as well. I want to ask, was there a particular moment that you felt that or saw that you needed to step in because South Carolina needed stronger leadership or different leadership?
There wasn't any sudden rapturous moment in time. I've just, like I said, always watched politics, and I've just been disappointed. And I feel like politics, of course, if you look back in history, there's always been animosity and fighting in politics.
Mhm.
But in my lifetime, it certainly seems like there's a lot more vitriol today.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, part of that social media, anger is what gets you clicks. Anger is what get people to watch.
Yeah.
And my parents taught me, to respect everybody. Christ said to love everyone, treat your enemy as thyself. And I don't think there's enough of that throughout the world today, and especially not in politics.
That's yeah. Um, I'm glad that you hold on to that so strongly, that those values never left you, you know, in the course of this whole thing. And if you are elected, that you continue to be that example. I think it's going to be very powerful. And
Thank
and also, what I've seen from you too is even in your campaign. Sorry, I see my camera is focusing on my cell phone. Forgive me, guys. It got a little blurry there. So I see, even with your campaign, even like there's values that you are not afraid to say that you stand for. Like you mentioned that you were, I think it was soccer, correct? And you didn't realize that you would have to tell boys that they couldn't be in women's sports. Like you don't sugarcoat that, or capitulate to what you think the voters would want, or what you think a certain party would want of you. There's an independence there, and a certain set of values. And I think that's what we're all looking for now. In a line with that, what do you believe are the biggest issues everyday South Carolinians are facing now?
Well, since you brought up values, let's talk about values now, and then let's come back to overall national issues. But in our country now, it's just very sad to me. I've always thought our country would collapse from hyperinflation caused by money printing, and I'm still concerned about that, and that's what I want to address. But we have this issue now, DEI, where we don't promote um, based on quality of work. it's not promotion based on merit.
Yeah.
And we also have this wokeism. And someone was asking me, well, what is woke to you? And I was like, well, people aren't born racist. I don't think we should teach people that. We're all sinners, but we all need to treat each other and love each other the same in life. And again, try to follow Christ's example. So many people have told me what the Bible says, but until you read the Bible, I really don't think you understand it as well unless you sit down and try to read it in totality. And the New Testament to me was about Christ's love and Christ's love for others, and the forgiveness of sins, and to realize that we're all sinners. But yeah, um, uh, I've met a lot of people that are very concerned about girls feeling like they're born as boys and stuff like that. And I just point out to people, it's normal for kids to struggle through puberty, and instead of adding to the confusion, we need to be supportive and loving. But so many people have been told they needed sex changes and undertook sex changes as teenagers, and then later in life, very very short time later, they regretted it. I could sit here and give you examples. I won't take a lot of time for that, but it's just very sad to me. We all struggle in life, and we all need to let these young kids that we know are struggling. I'm the first person that's always said government should stay out of the house. Parents should parent their kids like they want to. But when it comes to child mutilation and stuff like that, just like we don't let parents abuse children, I just don't think we should let people have sex changes as children. It's horrible, and it's caused disastrous effects. And it's not, if you're not a Christian, don't look at it from a Christian point of view. Just look at the medical studies that have shown that overall people have been less happy with them, not more happy with them.
Now, I have a video from an interview that you and I did at the gubernatorial forum, if you remember that. And I asked you a specific question when it came to the medical field. I think we have that video. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go ahead and put that up.
As far as healthcare goes these days, I think of all the candidates in the race right now, I have more business and medical experience because I've worked in the hospital and I've also run businesses. And the American people have lost faith in the healthcare system. Obamacare has failed us. And we've got to I think some people think the solution is more government. I think the solution is less government. Dealing with regulations in healthcare is burdensome for doctors and for patients. As far as healthcare goes these days, I think.
So here is my I want to share with you my own personal experience, and then I'd love for you to elaborate or just share your expertise. So I took my daughter to the hospital, to her doctor, her pediatrician, and I didn't want her to get any shots. And the one question, of course, they asked was like, why? And they weren't pressuring me or anything. They just wanted to know why I didn't want to get any shots. And I was just, I respectfully, just told her that I didn't feel comfortable. I would like to know more information about the shots that you want to give her. I want to know, is there any mercury in her? Just can you give me that type of information, not just like what will prevent, if she gets this medicine, what it prevents. I just want to know everything like that, so I can be in parent make informed decision. Because as we said, we've lost faith, because when we looked at COVID-19, there weren't as many. We could probably count on our hands. There are probably a handful of actual doctors that literally stood up and say, well, the research doesn't add up to what we're actually doing. And I think people lost faith. It's like, okay, we're supposed to trust you because you went to school, you have this knowledge. That's true. But we still have to, I would think we would want our doctors to also not just go along with it because it's I don't know why. Maybe it's convenient, or you feel that they can trust it, or that's what they've been taught, but to also look at the entire picture. And if we can find a different solution or do something different, or even if it goes against values, that you can stand up for that and we can trust you in that. Or at the other end of that is my when we look at, for example, eczema. I shared in, I think, my last podcast how my no, it was our subscriber meeting that we had. So we have an only subscriber meeting that we have with certain people that are experts or grassroots warriors in certain fields. And this was last week. I talked about my daughter having eczema, and that the funny thing was that I found the solution to that not by the drugs that the doctor gave me, but by a person who's it's like this mom and pop warehouse of a woman. She was a mom herself. Her son was struggling with eczema. The only thing they gave was just steroids. And so she did a ton of research and invented something that was organic and all like herbal. It had oils in there, and it works. So a friend of mine who is like a guru in the health industry, she just loves like healthy stuff. Like She loves natural, healthy. And so she discovered this lady who was right here close to us. I think she's right off of Remont Road. Her warehouse is there. And she was like, if your daughter's struggling with that, I wouldn't continue to use the steroids, which the doctors did tell me, how to use it so that way it wouldn't damage my daughter's skin. So they did all of the protocols they're supposed to do. But I was just wondering, like, why can't you give me something else that's more natural, like, or create something as a doctor? But I found this lady, and I decided to check it out because nothing else was working. My daughter has to constantly go back to that. I tried so many different things that was recommended, not just from the doctors, but from people in my community, and nothing worked. So finally, a friend of mine told me about this lady, and I did it. I bought her stuff, and it's called Genotype, and it worked. Like within the first night, I gave it to my doctor. My daughter the next morning, the redness on her face was gone. Like, and it's still like that. Like, she's still good, no issues, don't have to go back to the steroid cream. And I just kept wondering, and I don't want to put all the doctors, I mean, it's great that we civilians, we step up, and we that don't have a degree, and we do our part in this community and in our nation. But I was just wondering, like, why didn't we have doctors that could create something more organic? Like, why don't we have more pride in that, like going an organic route? And is it really just all about money? I don't know, because I'm not in that industry, but I'd love your take on that. Because you mentioned that we have lost faith in our healthcare professionals because of the whole Dr. Fauci thing. All of that was kind of like a climax for us, I believe. And me too. Like, I used to, my other two kids have shots. They've gotten all the shots. This one right here, though, as we're discovering all these things, and you see a lot of things online, a lot of podcasters are saying stuff. You're like, okay, maybe I need to do my own research now and look into the pros and cons of the medication myself, and then decide whether or not I wanted my daughter or my child to get this. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great experience to listen to. Thanks for sharing that. So, some personal experience. Yeah, I'm a father of four. So, like a lot of people that want to be a better parent, when my kids were little, we went to listen to a speaker. I think it was at church, talk about parenting. And one of the examples he gave was, he said, you know, a lot of times you have a mom with a new child and struggling with something with that child, and her next door neighbor has had 9 kids on one side, and the next door neighbor on the other side is a child psychologist. And who do you ask? And we're kind of taught to believe,
Mm,
go to what I call ivory tower syndrome. The great ivory tower. That's where the experts are. They know. So do you ask the child psychologist that has no kids, or the mom of 9 next door? Um, and I don't think either one is right or wrong. They've just had different types of education. And I think it's good to listen to everybody and make your own opinion. You can certainly learn a lot from academics and medicine and everything else that you will not learn from your maybe experienced next door neighbor. That might be my dad, when we always called my dad a Reader's Digest doctor, because he had all this great knowledge of medicine, but he was an engineer, and he would tell us something that he read in Reader's Digest. So, to me, vaccines and the type of solutions you're talking about are similar in that regard. Some people think vaccines are harmful. Some of them think they're not. My knowledge of them is 30 years old, and of course, I studied at the time when we tried to do what was right with our kids. One thing, when Fauci, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but when he lost me was when he said that everybody that had had COVID, he did not count them as the vaccinated population, and said if you've had COVID 2 months ago, you should go out and get the vaccine now, which just made no sense to me, because everything they teach you in med school is that the best immunity is natural immunity.
mm,
Um, and to go back to your example with eczema, which I know very little about, but I'll tell you, for example, I've had kidney stones. And if I'm going to give any advice to anybody in medicine, is to remember what causes your disease might not be the same as what causes someone else's disease. I've had a
mm,
few kidney stones in the past, but kidney stones, different thing calls them in different people. One person, a doctor told, a medical student told me, "Oh, well, my cousin had kidney stones. Stop drinking iced tea, and that fixed it. So you need to stop drinking iced tea." Like that was the solution for everything. And it's just not like that. So what works for you might not work for someone else, but if they have the similar symptoms, it's certainly worth trying. And I've heard it from patients over the years. I tried this from this doctor, it didn't work, and I went to this. My neighbor told me this, and it worked great. So I'm open to people listening and learning. Be careful what you do and who you're listening to. Um, but healthcare is built to it's great. I love my medical education, and I'm sure I've helped thousands and thousands of people with it. So I don't discount it at all. But I'm always open for people trying other things, as long as it's not harmful to them.
I love that. Okay, so essentially we work together, and
Yeah.
the parent, I guess, at the end of the day has to make the best decision,
Right, right.
or the decision they feel is the best.
And people ask me about vaccines. To me, the big point there is I certainly don't want federal government mandates with vaccines. So much. Um, it's the slippery slope to serfdom is it's always during a time of fear that you lose your civil liberties, right?
Mhm.
So we're all afraid during COVID, and the government says we're here to help you, and we're going to make you do this to protect everyone. And the vast majority of the people go along with it and give up our liberties, and then now you've given government more power. Um, it kind of goes to businesses being open. I don't think the government should have the power to force you to close a business in a situation like COVID. It should be up to you and your customers and your employees.
Agreed. Now, the other thing I wanted to move into when it comes to, and this, the voters and what you're seeing. I know you say you're at the barbecue, and you are in different spaces. So, what concerns do you hear most from voters as you travel throughout the state?
Yeah, so I've knocked on over 2,400 doors campaigning now. I've always looked at myself
Wow.
as the workaholic. I'm not the smartest person. I feel like I've got where I was by always trying to be the hardest worker. I was never the easy straight A student. I was always the one that struggled to get good grades. And what I hear from people is people are still concerned about the border, keeping our border secure. But people are concerned about affordability, and we have an affordability crisis in America. Um, and we're going to keep having it if we don't address our spending. People have said forever we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem, and we take in $5 trillion a year for the federal government. We spend $7 trillion. I think before COVID, a lot of that was mostly waste, but since COVID, it's reasons I won't go into. I think so much more of it has been fraud, and so much of the fraud is being exposed right now. Only a very small amount of it. When you see a small bit in one state, I think that gives you a hint what's going on in all the states. And there's just all these improper incentives. There's no incentive for state governments because a lot of times the money that's going out the door is matching dollars. So they want to get those matching dollars. So they look the other way for the fraud so they can get
Mm,
more and more matching dollars next year. When you look at the Medicaid numbers out of California have gone up astronomically in the last 6 years, and it's just that. But we need to look at it in all states. But talking about affordability, so how does that affect affordability? Well, then you've got money going out the door to fraudulent people, and that encourages other people. Hey, I can't get what I'm due. The only people that are succeeding here are the people cheating the system. So it encourages people to cheat the
mm,
system, and then there's less funds available for people that may need or deserve it. So we've got to get the fraud out of the system. Like I said, $7 trillion, and so much of that's fraud. Um, and then if we don't, if you look back in history, it's happened over and over and over again. Throughout the world, it happened to the Romans, it happened to the Dutch, it happened to the Germans, where they get into wars that are more expensive than they expect they're going to be. But they have social programs, and as governments go on, they get more and more social programs. And someone said a long time ago that democracy will fail because people keep electing the politician that promises the most from the public treasury until the public treasury is exhausted, and that's what we're doing since we have the power to print money. Um, we keep kicking the can down the road. You asked me what got me into politics, and that's this: if the politicians we had would actually address this problem,
mm.
have to be willing to say no sometimes. But we've got to get the fraud out of the system and work towards a balanced budget. If
Yeah.
we don't, right now, to make up that $2 trillion a year, the federal government through the U.S. Treasury sells bonds. Bonds are a loan, so they take this money out on loan, and then people and businesses in other countries buy those bonds. But at some point, we're going to have so many bonds that we cannot buy them, and the component of the federal government, the Federal Reserve, is the only thing that has the power to print money. It creates money out of thin air electronically, and they have come in like they did in the financial crisis and during COVID, and created money and bought bonds. And whenever they do that, it causes inflation. Anytime the supply of money goes up, it hurts everybody. And who does that hurt? The more poor you are, the fewer the assets you have, the more inflation hurts you. If you have a house and they print money, your house might go up in value. But if you're renting, your rent's going to go up, but you're not gaining anything from it because you don't own the home you're living in. So the more poor you are, the more it hurts you. Um,
Mm.
so that's what I hate to see, and I hate to see our government going the long term that way. And I tell everybody, I don't know who's worse, The Democrats that don't seem to care about the debt, or the Republicans that say they care about it and don't do anything about it.
Mm, wow. And would you say that this more aligns with like the establishment when you make that comment of for the Republicans?
I hate to put labels on things because I know there's a lot of good people trying to get us going in the right direction. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think the votes they take are people don't realize why they're taking those votes necessarily. Um, it's like if you have a big spending bill in Congress, um, people are like, hey, why did this conservative vote for that? But uh, what happens in Congress is if you don't vote a certain way, is the bill going to get amended to go further to the left for bigger spending or further to the right with less spending? And a lot of times, I think representatives end up voting for something because they realize in the process, hey, if I don't vote for this, the replacement bill is going to be that much worse.
Hmm.
But that's what I want to try to do, is go there and come up with solutions that work, that everybody can agree on, which sounds a lot easier, and it's easier said than done.
Now, I remember that one thing that I consistently see Trump talk about when it comes to different bills that are being passed in the House or in Congress is the wanting to hold on to power. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, do you think that because I hear you mention, it's they don't necessarily know the entirety of the bill being pushed through, but then it's like this other end too where it's like it's more about your instead of being all about your constituents. Like for example, I like to mention Governor DeSantis, and I know you're running for Congress, but I love his stance because, for example, we talked about COVID, we talked about all these different things, and he literally stood against that at the time doing his own research like you mentioned, and then had to go against so much in order to do the right thing, and he went against the grain. But now we see that Florida is thriving. People want to move there, and it's doing pretty well. So I think from him, when I hear him, to me it doesn't seem like it's about power for him, or even it's literally about taking care of the constituents. He's more focused on that than he does care about his own image or whatever. For example, I cannot say that same thing when I watch AOC because and these are different people, but I'm saying that these are people in offices. When you look at leadership, which I think we suffer, for a lack of leadership, a lack of true leadership. And I mean, it's like it's not just necessarily about you or even about you looking good, but it's about you doing the work. And we saw that with Governor DeSantis. If you listen to his interview, he talks about every single issue he brings up. He talks about the research he did with people around him to come to the conclusion and the decisions that he made for Floridians. And I mentioned AOC because when she was at that Munich conference and she gave a botched answer, it was more so about saving face than it is about just openly admitting like I'm not too familiar on that, or I don't want to answer that because I'm not like well versed on that. Like just admitting it, I guess, was instead of just you wanting to say something that still makes you look good and that you are informed on geopolitics, and then later trying to get on a video to clear up the air. It's like uh it kind of gives I'm not you know I'm going to save face. If
Right.
anything, I'm going to try to look good and like and try to prove myself, and then that's at a cost. Like what does that cost? What would you put on the line for that? And I think what true leadership is, it's even if it costs me this office or whatever it is, I'm going to do the right thing. And yeah.
Well, when it comes to power in government, I like to point out several things to people. The A lot of times, the people I have the most respect for are the ones that want to give up power. And George Washington was president for 2 terms, and then they tried to get him served for another term, and he said, "No, it starts to
Hmm.
look too much like a kingship."
He set that
No,
precedent. Yep.
what's that?
I said he set that precedent.
Yeah, and
That's
that
how
was
we do it
great, and
now.
we did it, and everybody followed that until FDR. In which time we had to do a constitutional amendment to fix it so people didn't stay in forever. But I, point out to people that, I had an aunt one time that told me, "Hey, I don't want this done at the local or state level because there's too much corruption here. I think this should be done with the federal government." And I had a completely different opinion because I think corruption follows the money. Whoever's paying the most money is the one that's more incentive for you to bribe. And the federal government just has more and more power, and Congress has abdicated its power along the way and given up its powers granted to it in the Constitution. I think Um, I think that's been a mistake of Congress in the past, but it's just too easy to turn over power to others to then they can blame them for it when something goes wrong.
Mhm.
Um, but money is power, and if we follow the Constitution, we shrink the federal government, push power back to the states. Because I'd rather have 50 competing states competing to try to make everybody happy than one federal government deciding what's right and wrong for everybody. Um,
Agreed. Yeah.
and President Trump's done a lot of that. He's really tried to shrink the federal government. By law, he can't do away with departments, but he's done what he can to legally shrink those departments, and that's taking power from them. And it'd be great if Congress would follow up and codify that. I'm going to keep going with one example I love. I'm not a Supreme Court historian, but I learned, for example, that in the early 1900s, there's the Commerce Clause in the Constitution says that the federal government can only handle interstate commerce. They can't be involved with commerce within states. And there was a farmer that, and the federal government was saying we're controlling the sale of grain at the time. And there was a farmer that grew extra grain more than he was allotted, and he gave it only to his own farm animals. And they tried to tax him or fine him for it. And he said, "Look, the federal government has no purview in this because I didn't even sell it to cross state lines." And they said, "Yeah, but you used it for your own farm animals, and that kept you from buying it. And since grain is traded across state lines, therefore the federal government can tell you what you can and cannot do with it." And he lost the case, and that blew up in the Commerce Clause to let the federal government basically regulate everything. And I think that was a horrible case that I'd love to see reversed because the federal government's way too involved in our lives.
Yeah.
Some states have super regulated and very restricted. If you want to live there, that's fine. But I think right now we see people fleeing those states for more Republican-led states, and where I think people are happier because the government's smaller in a lot of states.
I do want to get into talking about these small businesses because I know that in your ad you talked about your father being a small businessman, and I know that then I can hear your story again of your sister, and I want to just say I'm sorry for what took place with her. Um, your father ran a small business. What do small business owners in the Low Country tell you is, I guess, their biggest obstacle right now, and what's your fix?
I think the two big things are I hear it from not just businesses but households: taxation, taxation, taxation.
Yeah.
People talk about how they've worked hard all their life, and not only are they being taxed, particularly in retirement, but they the value of the money they have is worth less because of inflation. And what caused that inflation? Ultimately, it's money printing. I mean, short term, we have tariffs, which have caused prices to go up. I'll admit that. Um, but that is short term, and it's at the expense of trying to get critical minerals and such back in the United States.
Yeah.
If we're going to potentially be at war with China someday, we don't need to be buying our rare earth elements and technology from them. I always tell people um, that if I'm for free trade, but that has limits. You can't buy bullets from your enemy. And what are the bullets of
Yeah.
the future?
Agreed.
Technology,
Yes.
rare earth materials. You shouldn't be buying pharmaceuticals from China. We should not be buying agriculture from China. Those are the things we should be self-sufficient on,
Yes.
or being only buying from very, very friendly other countries.
Agreed. And so what is your thoughts on how to fix that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of got off topic, didn't I? You were asking me how to help people locally. Well, like I said, the inflation issue, the long term inflation issue, is money printing. So we've got to stop the fraud in government, and we need to continue Doge. A lot of the pushback on Doge was saying, well, they didn't have the authority to go into these government organizations and see the spending, which I think is baloney. I think they did have the authority to do it, but if that's being challenged, and we need to give them a legal framework so we can have a Department of Doge to go in and find the fraud and expose it. And I think you know public disclosure. It's our money that's being spent by the government, so we should know where it's being spent. And I think transparency is the best regulation. So many people want to regulate everything. I think transparency is the best. When people know about it, they're more likely to react to it. I've heard a lot of people say recently that artificial intelligence is going to help with that because it can look at large reams of data and give us summaries of it, so you can actually find the fraud better. So that's one of the hopeful things of it going forward. But so yes, to address affordability, don't let's just look at the short-term issues. Look at the long-term issue of the money printing and taxation. The way to get out of our debt crisis is to grow the economy because it's all how
Mm.
much debt do you have related to your income, and your GDP is basically where the income for the country's coming from, your domestic product. So it's like if you make $50,000 a year and borrow 5,000, it might not be that catastrophic. But if you make $50,000 a year and borrow $45,000, you're in trouble. And right now, about 115% now. My image froze. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes, I can still see you.
Good.
It's
Good.
just a little blurry, but
All
I
right.
think on my end too. But I think we're good. I think
All
we're
right.
still good.
Sorry about that.
Just
Yeah.
you and I.
But anyway, so the way to get out of our debt situation is to grow the economy. And to grow the economy, you've got to deregulate so you don't burden businesses. And then we can grow the economy and try to get out of our debt crisis.
Now, I don't know if you are aware of, I'm going back to Florida because I'm just amazed at their economy. I'm amazed at what's happening there. So I'm kind of I'm listening to everything I can on Governor DeSantis because I want to learn. And I was just talking to my producer off air, and I was saying, as much as I talk about politics now, I'm very more well versed in what's happening nationally than I am locally, and I think I need to change that. And so, um, what I was referring to with Florida was there's an SB 484 bill that Governor DeSantis they are proposing. Do you know anything about that when it comes to the data centers?
Help me out with that one. Give me the details.
So basically, this is to allow, like you talked about, the growth of the economy, to allow these data centers to come in, but then they have to like fit the bill when it comes to their electricity and things like that. So it doesn't affect and their water, so it doesn't affect the everyday citizen. And so they want that expansion of these data centers to come in because that means more jobs, right? That's more money in the state. But then also we don't want that to affect our constituents, the people that live here. That's what they're worried about. And so this SB 484 bill basically says we want you to come into our state. We want you to build here if you want to. However, we don't want our electricity going up. We don't want those things to be affected necessarily. So this bill kind of proposes that. And what are your thoughts on something like that when we talk about growing this economy and um, expanding economically, but then also again we got to deal with what people are concerned about. Our electricity here in Charleston's already extremely high. But I personally, as a citizen, I'd want businesses to come here. I'd want more jobs to be created. I would want that, but I would say that would have to be regulated in some way, where it doesn't so that it doesn't affect the everyday citizen. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, The great thing about free speech is we have great free speech. The bad thing about free speech is it lets foreign actors come in and try to undermine things in the United States. And the Chinese have done a lot in our country to try to undermine, to try to fund ICE protesting. And they've tried to disperse bad information about AI because they want to lead in AI. And the other thing they've tried to do is, especially roughly 10 years ago or so, they wanted to push all the green energy stuff because they wanted them to have a cheap price of energy and us to have an expensive price of energy. So I'm
Right.
sorry to bring all those things
No,
together,
this is
but
great. This is good because we can look at England. We can look at evidence of exactly what you're saying.
right.
Go ahead.
So, so, so the Chinese have really been pushing behind the scenes, trying to convince American people that AI data centers are bad. But like anything else, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and there's pros and cons of things. And I know a lot of people, especially on social media, everything's just black and white. But this is what I like to point out. There's a lot to point out about data centers. First of all, the older ones used a lot of water, and they were pumping lots of water out of the aquifers, and maybe it's evaporated or pumped back in. Newer ones can use closed loop systems, which is what I think we should require them to do, so that the cooling, they fill them up one time with water, just like the radiator in your car, and you're not constantly putting water into it, so they don't use large volumes of water. The next is electrical cost. I like what President Trump has said is data centers need to fund their own electricity, and they can't be taking them from homeowners because if they're a net drain on the system, then your electrical prices are going to go up. And each little community is a little different, but for example, if you, I think every community is different. But for example, if you take one and say, okay, you've got to make your own energy, then they put a gas turbine on site and they create energy. Well, they're running the data center 24 hours a day, but the data center doesn't run at peak energy use 24 hours a day. It might just run it at 1 hour a day, and the other 23 hours they're producing excess energy, which they're pumping back into the grid. So you have an increased supply of energy, not a decrease, and that's going to drive costs down. Similarly, I think people don't realize um, AI computer processing is measured in something called tokens. And just in the last 2 years, token costs have gone down from something like $30 a token to 9 cents a token. Well, why does that matter? What that means is the computer chips are getting that much more efficient. That token reflection is also a reflection of heat generation. So, whatever 30 divided by zero point zero 0.09 is, that, however 1,000% that is, that's how much less energy they require, and that's how much less cooling they require for the same bit of processing. So that's how free enterprise works. We're having competition between all the chip makers, and that's great. So we're going to get a lot more compute power out of less and less energy use and less cooling needs. So we've talked about energy. We've talked about conservation. I'm a Boy Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout. My three sons are. I think when I've met people, the people that really seem to understand the most about conservation are the hunters and fishers that love it so much. I think we're the best conservationists when you're listening and understanding things. Not to say other people aren't, but I'm just want to say I'm a conservationist. I love South Carolina. I was blessed to be born here, and I want to keep it beautiful. So the water use is important, like I said. And then the last issue that I hear about with data centers is sound. So they certainly need to be regulated to the point that you don't want to be in your neighborhood and someone next door sell 100 acres and a data center go up and now you have sound pollution all over. You don't want that. And then this goes back to people always think, do you allow them, don't you allow them? But I think it shouldn't be a federal government thing. Again, I'm a states' rights person. And even with the state governments, I think they should say, okay, here's our big framework and let the local communities decide. So if a local community doesn't want it, that's what building codes are for. Some communities are going to want them, communities are going to not. But I don't think the federal government should decide for you. I think you should be able to decide locally.
Love that.
That's a
Oh,
mouthful.
yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for
Can I
diving
say
into
one more
it.
thing about AI?
Go. Yes.
Okay. So I like to point out to people that, if I asked you, if I told you there was a new technology coming out and it was displace 80% of all jobs, would you want to stop that technology? And a lot of people say yes. And I say, well, then you just stop the tractor, because when the tractor came out, the majority of the population in the United States was working on farms, and it displaced them, and they got new, better jobs in the city. And you can look back in history when Great Britain industrialized, there was the same problem. People thought, hey, we're doing all these jobs manually. There's not going to be new jobs. But if you look back at, and I've had so many people tell me AI is going to be different. But that's what they said every time a new technology came out. When the loom came out, India said, we have millions and millions of women making rugs by hand. If we let the loom succeed, then all these women, they're already in poverty. They're going to be in worse poverty and not going to be feed themselves. Japan did just the opposite. They didn't regulate at all. The loom came out. It displaced a lot of people because of increased productivity. Look how much more successful Japan has been with their free enterprise system than India trying to protect people from new technology. I think AI will be the same way. It's scary. I think we need to be careful with it. We need to be smart about it.
Yeah.
We don't need to take it for granted, but we need to not over-regulate it either, because it's going to increase productivity, and people will change jobs. Just like there's very few people that know how to repair horse and buggies anymore. I think that's a good thing. I think the car has been a net improvement for the country. The internet's caused a huge change in the job market in the world. I mean, look where we are now. You're probably too young, but now compared to where we were 30 years ago before much internet and social media, the world has changed so much, and it's so much for the better.
Yeah. And we're way ahead in the AI race than China is right now because of the moves that Trump has made. And
Mhm.
I'm very grateful for it. I've seen it in my own life. Just to throw my little 2 cents in there. I've taken a course on on AI, and I'm still doing one right now, and in my own work with as a creator, as a beauty creator, and it literally makes my day so much faster
Yep.
when it comes to even, I mean, there's an AI tool that you can integrate into your email that will respond to you. You just give it the prompts, and tell it what you want to, kind of like a template. You just tell it what you want to say, and like if I have deals and contracts and stuff, it doesn't mess with that, but it just does the initial contact, what what I would usually say, and things like that. So it's you can have that integrated. And I know Gmail already has, I think, Gemini or something like that that helps, but I'm talking about it. You can integrate even a different system that will respond for you in certain emails. So it's like, and that's kind of helped me a lot with my emails, and getting things down, and responding to the deals and contracts that I have with my on my beauty channel. So it's been tremendous. I can tell you that on my scale of things, where it's creator world.
Right.
It's great.
I hear great examples like that all the time. It increases productivity. That's the whole thing. It increases and people say, "Oh, well, people are
Yeah.
going to lose jobs." Well, jobs will be shifted, and the younger you are, you're going to benefit because you're going to use the technology better than I am.
Hmm.
Because you're used to learning new technologies and moving forward. So that's what I tell young people: whatever job you want to go into, don't hesitate. Do what you love. Do something that you can support yourself with, and learn how to use AI and other tools with it to make it better. Increased productivity is always better for society in the long run.
Okay, so when you talked about the border, I want to get on that too, because you mentioned that that was one of the things that voters tell you is also of concern, right? Um, so can you dive a little bit more into that? Like, how does the border manufacturing or trade impact South Carolina directly?
So, we're a country of immigrants. I'm a Christian. I want to treat everybody fairly, but in our country, we have vast entitlement programs. If you go to the ER, it's not an option for whether or not they can treat you or not. The government requires them to treat you.
Hmm.
They used to say, well, the law says they're required to treat you if it's an emergency, but there have been too many lawsuits on things that where the ERs turned away people that they thought um, were non-emergent turned out to be. And so ERs generally just treat everybody. Education is given to you free. It's not free. The taxpayer pays for it. Um, Insurance costs go up because of so many illegal immigrants. So it's not that I dislike these people. I want to help everybody that we can. But when people come across the border illegally, number one, they're breaking in line to the people that are applying and trying to come legally.
Hmm.
And number two, it is an additional burden on the system. Do we get labor? Yes, we do, but I also don't want to take advantage of people, and so everything needs to be done in a fair hand like that. So when I talk with people, so many people are fearful that if another Democrat comes into office, well, first they're fearful if we lose Congress, then we're going to have two years of impeachment, and next they fear that when the next president comes in behind Trump, that the Democrats are just going to open the border again because they've
Yeah.
seen the devastation it's created on our country in a lot of ways. And I don't mean to discount the good people that come here to work hard, but again, we've got to follow the laws. You can't say, oh, well, this person's nice and they broke the law, so I'm going to let them off, and this person's mean and they broke the law, so I'm going to put them in jail. That's not the way laws work. They need to apply to everyone evenly.
I totally agree with that, and that's a biblical thing as well. I know we are getting to our time here. This is such a great conversation with you. I want to say this comment that I got from Dennis Handel. He just said, and I'm thinking that this is referring to our back to our conversation when we were talking about whether we go to the psychologist or we go to the mom of nine. So he said, yes, take in as much info as you can consume. Listen to experienced parents, listen to book professionals, listen to truth, your truth. Everyone is different and no one fits into another's box.
Great comment. Yep, yep. I like your truth, because, again, what works for one person does not work from the other, and people need to be comfortable with their decisions and not have decisions forced upon them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then also we can't negate also that there's an objective truth, which is the word of God.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, so I agree. Okay. So guys, I hope that this was very informative. Dr. McCone, thank you so much for joining today. I do want to encourage you guys that make sure you get out and vote, number one. Make sure that you are informed as well. I hope that these episodes that we have allow you guys to hear more from our different candidates that will be running for different offices, and then you can glean from that. And again, I encourage you guys, if you got questions, if you're watching the replay, I encourage you to ask those questions too. Um, and I'll be happy to try and get those to Dr. Sam McCown so he can answer. But these I think are very vital, and I think we cannot stay, just idly by and allow this time to just to be dismissed. I think it's very important, especially as a Christian, with the momentum that we have. God is doing something in this nation, and we have to participate. We are called the ecclesia, which is the governing body, so we are called to participate in every aspect of life. And I want to encourage us to do that. If you have not already subscribed to my subscriber community, so you can be in on those conversations, these are with experts. Last we had was Iranian expert Inez Cyrus. She was with us this past week on Monday. And then this coming month, we meet once a month. We'll have Gino will be joining us, and he's a grassroots warrior. He wrote a book about the schools in Chicago, and he's making a huge dent and making huge waves in that education system with the knowledge he has and with exposing certain things that are taking place to better our school systems here in America. So make sure, if you want to be a part of those conversations and you want that information that will help you to be able to stand before our city council or school board meetings with informed information and not just reactionary, but you can articulate and be, calm with that, articulate it, but make the change that's needed to be made in a very in a Christ-like manner. So
Can I say
join
one
that.
thing in closing?
What'd you say?
Can I
Sorry.
say one last thing?
Yes, please.
First, I just want to say thank you for having me on here. It's been great. I've enjoyed getting to know you as well, and thank you to the listeners for being in. And I just want to say I'm the only one that, my opponents may all be nice people, but I'm the only one in the race that can say they're a political outsider, a doctor, an engineer, an entrepreneur. I feel like I've had a lot of success across a lot of industries, and I want to bring that success to serving our country. So please go out and vote. Early voting starts May 26th, and election day is June 9th. So again, thanks for having me on here, Alicia. I appreciate it. I appreciate your prayers.
Yes, of course. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And yeah, Dr. McCown, thank you so much for being on. And I'm going to be praying for you. I think with the wide knowledge that you had, especially starting and being successful in multiple different businesses, is something essential to bring to the table. So I can't wait to see how this turns out. And I'm going to be praying for you. Guys, thank y'all again so much for joining. And I will see you all